So today we're 3D printing more of those parts for our hummingbird automatas. We're also going to start a new project today. We're going to be taking this classical looking statue here. We're going to be augmenting it. And you can notice there's some broken kind of chipping on it here. So what we're going to be doing is making a new base for this that covers up this existing kind of stand circular base. And we're going to be also turning it into another type of functional device. Instead of just a sculpture, it's going to be an art piece that serves a purpose. So it can be kind of like more of a lifestyle item than just something to sit there and look pretty. So we'll get into that in a little bit. I don't want to give it away quite yet. But this is a pretty nice section. I'm just going to try to show you off some of the details. And you can see that we've kind of adorned it in some golden items, some chains, some paint brushes, just things to kind of set the mood, give it a little contrast. So I'm going to leave this top down for now. At some point we'll get some other shots of it for you. And what I'm going to start with is we're just going to pull some measurements from this so that when we're designing the actual piece that's going to go on it, make sure that they're going to fit nice and snug. I'm going to pop out our new calipers. This is what we'll use to kind of pull these dimensions off of this. And this is the kind of thing that's why we got this extra large set of 12-inch calipers. Normally they only go about 6 or 8 inches wide, but we knew we were going to work on some larger projects like this. So we made sure we got the full 12-inch model. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to bring this around the back. We're going to try to get, if we can, this fully wide dimension. It's going to be a little hard because the jaws don't quite get all the way there. May have to see if there's another angle. Otherwise, we'll have to kind of make some adapters to these jaws at some point to get even further out onto the object. Let's see, you can see what I'm talking about. These jaws don't come out quite long enough to be able to get that full dimension. It's pretty close. We really want it to be right on the outer diameter of this area that I'm measuring here, because this is the part that we're going to kind of reference to cover up, and we want it to sit really as flush as it can with that, so it looks like one harmonious part. So I'm going to get as close as I can right now, and just kind of eyeball it a little, but there's one thing that we can do that'll get it even closer. So if we take something else that we know is pretty straight. is write that down. Then we're going to subtract the dimension of both of these Allen keys from that. So I'm going to set this Allen key right in the jaw. And so now we're at 10.23 for that one. And we're at 9.73 for this one. So now we can take those numbers and we can calculate. First number was
10 point.
no, first number.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
182.
182 point.
I don't. What that one was. I just took 182 millimeters.
Yeah, but we have to do it again.
Okay.
All right, we didn't get the decimal place there, so we're just gonna have to do this one more time. So this time we're getting 181.53, which is telling me that that circle isn't exactly even all the way around. So let's take a closer look at it for a sec. So we can see that this rim here is pretty circular, but it's not exact. There's a couple little kind of bumps and divots along. So it's not a perfect circle all the way around the whole thing. So what we're going to just do is kind of average it to 182. And we'll know that we'll probably need to make some adjustments when we actually print this. So we'll print some test pieces for it, just to lock in that dimension exactly where we want it before we make the final thing. So let's just call that 182, and then we'll subtract from that.
10.23.
10.23.
9.73.
9.73. So that gives us 162.04. So I'm going to call it 162. And then we're just going to give it a little bit of extra breathing room around. So we might go to 165 just to make sure that it's really going to go all the way around, since there are some kind of divots and stuff. And then also, because we're going to be 3D printing it, when you print, the extrusion line tends to push into a circle a little bit and kind of decrease the diameter of that circle. So we're just going to give ourselves a little extra breathing room, because it's better, it's a little oversized and a little undersized in this case. meantime, I'm going to start our next print over here. So we'll just jump over to this screen for a sec. We'll just grab the next piece that we need to print. So let's see. So we have printed out a good amount of these pieces, and I think what we still need to do is this set over here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple of these that I think are going to print well together overall. So let's grab these kind of bushing related pieces. They're a little taller and they all kind of have similar geometry. They can print in a similar fashion. So hopefully we can get those all together. I'm going to bring those over to the bed that I'm actually going to use to print. So Prusa gives you several different beds. You can kind of organize different sets of prints on. So I'm using this bed number 3 right now. And I'll move this piece back over here. And we'll go ahead and use the arrange tool. So just group all these pieces kind of nice and tight with each other. Go ahead and slice them. So good. I think I'm going to give it a little bit more of a brim because these are kind of taller pieces. 3 and drop this down to 0.4. Just double check that. 0.4. Alright, and that'll be another 30 minutes. Clear this off. Okay, now that that's running, we can jump back over to here and we can start to take a look at what we're going to do for this statue. So I think for this, because we're going to be using some decorative elements, some kind of things that match the aesthetic of this statues, we're going to use some kind of Baroque Rococo style flourishes. So normally to do something that I'm kind of engineering, I'd probably go to Fusion 360. But in this case, I'm actually going to jump into Cinema 4D because it's going to let us deal with those meshes in a volumetric system.
which is going to let us be a little more playful with it, kind of be a little less rigid, a little more gestural and sculptural. So I'm going to open up Fusion, and I'm just going to jump into our starter scene. I just have that shader ball in our starter scene just as a kind of reference point, but we don't need that right now, so I'm going to delete that. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a tube just to be able to get that dimension that we just got from the statue. And so that's going to be a inner radius of 165 divided by 2. Just going to get us 82.5. And then we're going to do an outer radius of maybe 170 divided by 2 for 85. And then let's get a quick dimension of how tall that section is. I'm just going to try to get this dimension right here. Actually use this side. Zero this out and just come up. So we're going to call this, it's like 17. You notice there's a lot of like ripply parts here. And that's why we need to make this a little bit oversized on the diameter, where it's about 17 millimeters most of the way around. And then I also want to get the height of this very bottom part. So that's about 30. And then how far that sticks out from here, kind of have to wing this a little bit. So can't get it exact. But I'm going to say that's also going to be about 30. So I'd rather have it be a little too big there. I'll probably get away with a little less. Just seeing if there's a better way I can get that dimension. I just have to kind of guess it. Yeah, we're going to say 25. So we're going to go 30 high, 25, and then 17 up. So this part is going to be 17. And we want to give it a bunch more subdivisions. Right now it has 16 rotational segments around the outside. So we're going to increase that. Let's start at 32. We may increase it even more later. Alright. And right now we don't need our kind of backdrop, this kind of curved area behind this. We usually use that for rendering, kind of mimicking a photography backdrop with that curved piece of paper or fabric.
Is it in your way?
Yeah. I mean, it's just at this point in the design, it's kind of can be distracting. And also, you'll be able to see some of it. Some of our model is actually below it.
Oh, okay.
Because the model always is going to start at kind of 0, 0 centered wherever it is. So half of it's going to be below 0, half of it's going to be above.
Right.
And so we're just kind of cutting off some of our design. So I'm just going to turn it off for now, just so we can see exactly what we're working with. And I'm also going to switch our display type just down to lines, just so we can really see the geometry that we're working with. Alright, so we have the band that's going to go right around this section, the statue, and now we need to do those other dimensions where it's going to kind of extend out and cover up a lot of this chipping. So I'm going to create another tube. I'm just going to duplicate this one. And we're going to make this one, we said 30 high. So I'm going to change this from 17 to 30. And then we need to make it extend out. I believe I said 25. And then we also need to take, once again, this is going to be a little tricky. We're not going to get super exact. I'm just going to try to get the overall dimension of this bottom section. So it's a little different as we rotate around. As you can see, it kind of is a little uneven, and because I'm not able to get the jaws all the way around, I'm not getting exact dimensions here, but we'll get something that's close enough. So we're going to call that 207, and then we have to subtract those numbers again that we took of the actual width of these Allen keys. So I'm going to say 207, let's call it 208. Actually, let's call it 210, just to really be on the safe side. So we're going to go 210 minus
10.23 and 9.3
minus
73.
9.73. 190.04. We're going to just ignore that 0.04 because 0.04 millimeters is something we can ignore for this.
Half a millimeter. Like even less than half
yeah.
a millimeter, right?
Alright, so we got to 190. So that's going to be our inner diameter for this part. Is going to be 190, and since it's asking for radius, we divide by 2. That doesn't feel right. I might have done something wrong here. You know what I'm going to do? Turn this whole guy on its side. Just carefully. This is a very heavy statue. It's not completely solid throughout. There's a little bit of a hole down here, but most of this kind of upper portion is solid. This is extremely heavy. And I'm going to just measure down here so we can get a little more accurate reading of this part. So it does look like it's 190. So maybe we did something wrong when we measured the other part. Yeah, it's 190. This has got to be less. Yeah, this is closer to... Yeah, we did something wrong when we measured earlier. okay if it sticks out a little, if there's kind of a gap.
That's fine. That's fine. I was thinking
Well,
we'll
let's.
just seal it up with like resin afterwards, so
That's
that
not a bad idea.
there won't be any gaps.
Right, right, right. We should make only part of it sealed up, not the whole thing. So if we need to take it off to change out wiring or anything. I'm gonna call this 155 for now because I don't want to leave an unnecessary gap. And we'll print a little test piece just to see if that 155 can really wrap around. We're just talking about this part right here, that radius, well, that diameter. I'm gonna call it 155. So that's our original tube. We want to drop the outer radius, 155 divided by 2. There we go. This makes a little more sense. And actually, that's going to be our inner radius. Our outer radius, we'll do 160 divided by 2. Oop. So inner is going to be 155 divided by 2. Outer is going to be 160 divided by 2, which would be 80. Alright, so let's just double check our first tube here. Looks good, that makes sense. And then for our second tube, we're going to do, yeah, it was 190. So that makes sense as well. And then we're just going to bring this one down in our side view. So that'll set like that, and we just need something to bridge those two. So for that, we can potentially do some sort of like molding like shape.
Yeah. But
right?
We don't have to like go too hard on it right now. I just want to see how the assets
Fit onto it?
Yeah.
Okay. So now basically what we have is we have a strip that's going to go around this part and a strip that's going to cover up this entire section. We haven't connected them yet, but we're just going to see how those act as kind of a canvas for what we want to do to this decoratively. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in some assets that we have that are kind of like Baroque Rococo architectural ornaments. And so I'm just going to try to find some of the ones that we might want to use. And then once we have one that we want to try out, I'll show it to you. So actually I'll bring this over so we can look at these together. So here we have a bunch of different kind of flourish brushes. Just little spirals and swirls. Almost vine-like structures. And as we go down, they start to get a little more complex, intricate, with multiple elements.
Right.
And
So we get really intense, I see.
yeah.
Okay.
So are any of these speaking to you, or are you?
Oh, no, let's look through all of them. I want to
Okay.
see. So I don't remember seeing them last time. I know we went through them, but I don't remember all of them. But it looks like it's just getting more complicated.
Yeah, they're kind of just taking this very simple shapes that we started with and like spiralizing them almost.
Right.
And then doing some like mirrored geometry versions.
Use
And these ones are a little kind of thinner, a little wispier. There are some that have kind of more,
Robust.
kind of, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
let's see what the other ones are doing.
I'm just gonna quickly kind of run through this. There's also these,
the ones that goes around.
yeah, which might be nice for what we're doing if
Yeah.
you want a continuous kind of pattern on part of it. And then you could do some bigger, chunkier flourishes. This might be actually what we want to use the UV resin printer
Yeah.
to do a little trim around parts and then do some bigger, chunkier ones. So we'll keep those in mind for later. Let's see, they have a bunch of those.
Okay.
But let's look at one of our other packs here. I forgot which ones are which, so we're just going to have to kind of search through them. Okay, so there's these kind of circular motifs, floral motifs, some kind of fleur-de-lis like shapes. Those could be nice as kind of a big center. There's the classic fleur-de-lis, and then all these are kind of just iterations on that classic design that most people know and see. Then we have some of those more swirls again, but these are a little more, as Gio said, robust.
Yeah.
Some kind of volutes, this shape where it starts off kind of a gentle arc and then spirals around. Learn that those are called volutes.
You know, the subtle on one right now. Scroll back up again.
Yeah, sure.
Just so we can pick one to start off with.
Yeah.
Go for V1 Geo2. Geo1.
V1 Geo1. All right, that one. So we have to go over here and we're going to find where that actual asset is. We'll actually have to open it up from our cinema menu, which is off screen. In the meantime, we'll check in on our 3D print for a sec. So we can see those are looking like they're working. I know it's a little hard to see right now, but we'll take a closer look at them when they're finished printing. Get them a little more centered for you. And I'll see if I can get us, might be able to get us a little more zoomed in. Okay, this is a tiny bit better. But I'll let you look at that while we find those files. It was V1 Geo2, that's what we're looking for. V1 G, O1 or O2? O1. Okay, so that came in pretty small. It's really hard to see. It's all the way over here. I'm going to try re-importing it at a slightly different scale so it comes in a little bigger for us. Geo1. And I'm just going to bring it in. It's going to come in about 10 times bigger. Yeah, okay. You'll see it's kind of all the way up in this weird spot over here. So I just want to get it kind of recentered first. So I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to use the Axis Center tool to kind of zero out its points. And then we'll be able to go and reset the PSR so it's right smack dab in the center of our scene. And I'll switch us to a shaded view for a sec, just so you can kind of see that a little clearer, what that piece looks like. Oh, I'm sorry guys, I never switched us back to our screen. So here you go, here now you can see this architectural flourish ornament that we have here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to bring that out to kind of sit on the face of our object. Right about there. Now, do we want this on the top kind of row or the bottom?
Do it on the bottom row.
Okay. So we'll just bring this down and bring it out a little further. We're just going to get it just so that it sits kind of right in front of that piece. And then we'll have to add some deformer to it to kind of get it to wrap around, but we'll worry about that in a sec. We actually might make it kind of a flat piece depending on where the rest of this base that we're going to put on.
I just wanted to see how you wrap it around the curved surface.
Okay. Alright, so probably the first thing I would try would be a bend deformer.
Okay.
And so what we're going to do, or actually maybe there might be a few other deformers that we could try that might actually give us a better result.
You know, before actually bending it around it, can you just paste it onto it, make it as one object, and then can we bend it around it?
Well, once it's one object, if we do it as part of, I guess if we do it as part of a volume system and we instance it, then yeah, we could do that. But probably it makes, if we want it bent, it probably makes sense to do it first. Do you just want to see what it'll look like? Okay, all right. So in that case, what I'm going to do is a little unconventional. We might not do this for the final. I'm going to kind of skew the proportions of it a little. I'm just going to make it thicker than it would normally be. So I'm just going to take this z-axis parameter and just scale it up. To the point where we can now move it back a little bit and kind of have it sit in there. A little bit more. Once again, we wouldn't actually do this on the final, but just to kind of experiment and see what it might look like. Just kind of using it as a cheat for now. And then you want to merge it?
Yeah.
Alright. Let me just double check this tube. Okay, so this needs to be a little bit wider here on the outer radius. At least like 2 millimeters. And that means we can move this out a little bit more. Let's just double check that we're kind of still in there. And don't worry about this part that cuts in. We can always remove that later. And do you want it right at the base, or do you want it a little higher?
No, it's fine.
Okay. Alright, so we could do a bool. But if we want it to kind of almost flow into the edge, where it looks like it was really sculpted onto the surface, I think we're going to probably use a volume system. Just because it will let us control where and how this kind of joint between these two objects is. With a bool, it will always just be like a sharp kind of protruding out. But if we want that to have a little bit of kind of flow between the two, so that it looks like it was actually more like it was molded by hand. So I'm going to bring in a volume system. And what this does, just bring this over here so you can see for a sec. This is my kind of all the objects in my scene. So what this volume system does is allows you to merge two pieces or more of geometry and either kind of add or subtract them from each other. So we're going to grab in our secondary tube, drop that in, and our decorative element. And volume system by default has a voxel size kind of way too big. So I'm going to drop this to 0.1. We'll see if that gets us close. Yeah, that's pretty good. We might increase that later, but it's a good starting point. So now these are one object. And what I think we want to do is give it a little bit of smoothing. Just so that they, once again, kind of feel like they're a little more one object, and you get rid of some of those kind of artifacts of the geometry. Now this is obviously still protruding way too much for what we would want in the final, but it gives us a sense of where we're going.
But it did smooth out and connect
Yeah.
with each other, so it did its job.
And we just want to give this this tube that we're working with here a few more subdivisions, because you can see that kind of segmenting happening in there. So we're going to go to 128 on that. Yeah.
Okay. And now that we finished that one, it looks good, like that. And honestly, I know that's not how conventionally it would look, but it's kind of an interesting feel.
You like the how much it protrudes?
I've never seen that before, but it's kind of interesting. Like, so on the top one, can we take that same asset but now curve it around?
Sure, sure. So we'll just make a duplicate of this, and we'll bring it up and bring it back a little bit. Let's kind of look at this at a few angles. Alright, so let's make this its kind of original proportions again. It is kind of interesting what it does when it stretches out.
It's like tears up and
Yeah, it almost makes it. Yeah, I was gonna say it makes it look like some sort of animal or creature.
Flying out of it.
Yeah. You know, I think the original designs are more meant to represent like flora. Yeah. But now we've almost switched it to fauna. See, that's why doing this creative process this way, where we have a general idea of what we want to do, but we're kind of playing around with it, leading to unexpected results, sometimes you get a happy accident like this where it creates something really interesting. Alright, so let's see if we can use this bend deformer. And I haven't updated my software in a while, but there's a new version of this bend deformer that I really want to try to use. The traditional bend deformer has a few limitations and kind of funky little quirks that you have to work around, which we'll see in a second. And the new bend deformer is actually supposed to solve it. So maybe the next time we get on, I'll take some time to update this piece of software so that we can try out the new one, because I think it's really going to lend itself to this. It makes it a lot easier to know where the bend is being generated from, and it actually lets you kind of align the bend symmetrically to what you're doing, rather than, you'll see in a second when I apply this bend deformer. And then we add some strength to it. It's going to bend. It just shot itself off screen really quick, which is what I expected. It's going to bend in a direction that we don't expect, and it's going to bend from a location that we don't expect. So it doesn't even really look like it's bending. First thing we're going to do is fit it to the parent. So now it's that kind of orange cage that's around our object. That's where the deformer is going to affect. But we'll still see it's bending kind of up and over, right, rather than around. So that's because it's right now on the y-axis it's bending, right? So it's bending over the y-axis. We really want it to bend around the z-axis. So we'll hit Z and we'll fit to parent. But you can still see it's kind of not doing it how we would want.
It's not actually wrapping around it.
Yeah. So, there's a few things we can do to try to affect this. And actually think maybe hold on. It's always a little bit of somewhat guessing games to get this to behave just the way you want. Because it depends on the original kind of axis of the object. And so we're just going to jump through. There we go. Alright, so we're actually on the x-axis now. And what we want to do is align this to 270, because that's going to get us kind of parallel to it. And then we can see the strength, but we can still see it's basically bending from this point as a station, and then as it goes further along, it bends more and more. The new bend deformer actually, I think, lets you set like a pivot point in the middle more. There is a way to do that with this one, but it's just a lot less intuitive. So what we'll do...
It is getting the curve.
Yeah, it's starting to get where we want it.
And by the way, I liked how that we were playing around with the other angles. It was giving it attitude. I don't think I've seen people play around with them looking so like discombobulated.
Yeah. So we can always come back to that and play around with it more. But let's try to get this kind of fit to this curve. So we're going to come up here and we're going to just rotate our object. And right now, because we're not like making the final version of this, we're just going to kind of wing it a little bit. It's not going to be super exact. I'm going to go in our top view. Gives a little more precision.
But once you mesh it together, it'll be clean enough, right?
It'll be clean enough. I would, if I was taking time to do this correctly, I would experiment a little more. I might try another type of deformer or projection based thing.
But isn't this what Fusion 360 is best for doing stuff like this, where you're continually wrapping around something? I've seen people do this when they're creating rings.
Yeah, so Fusion doesn't have like the deformer systems that this does that let you like play around with it more in real time. And Fusion also tends to, when you import a mesh and you're trying to uh, affect that mesh in the ways that like with CAD, kind of like doing like B-rep models, um, you have to convert them, and often that conversion fails. More often than not,
Is
that
it because
conversion
the
fails.
mesh is like not organized correctly, or is it?
Potentially, or just because when you're working in CAD and with bodies, and we'll have to go into more of a demonstration to really make this clear what's happening. You're working with the dimensions of the geometry as one whole body, whereas when you're working with a mesh, you can see this is what I mean by mesh. You're working with a bunch of little facets of the surface that are interconnected. And when you're doing that, um, you're only really affecting the relationship of each dot on that mesh to each other. And that's not how CAD works. So in Fusion, there is a mesh mode that we could use, but it wouldn't let us, unless we're able to do a proper conversion, um, which most of the time when you're just grabbing any asset, most of the time that mesh conversion fails, or it does it in a weird way, or
Is
it
it
gives you some
Fusion's
artifacts.
260's fault that it's messing up?
Not necessarily, no. The mesh wasn't created with the idea of going back into a kind of B-rep system. Um, so, we could create, what we could do is we could create all the kind of uh, more architectural geometry of this. These tubes that we created, we could have created those in Fusion and imported them. But then if we wanted to change them, we would have to go back into Fusion, re-import them. And so it makes a little more sense just to be able to have them in here, because it means that if we need to edit them, it's just a much quicker process.
Okay. So we're pretty close to wrapping it around this one, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah. So I just want to kind of get back into this top view for a sec. I'm going to turn off some of our other objects and layers here just so we get a little cleaner view so I can really see what we're doing. And yeah, we are pretty close here. So we're just going to move this forward a little bit more. Right, and then I need to curve it. Just going to go back. We're going to curve it a little bit less. It's kind of over curved relative to our curve.
Yeah, just a tiny
Right,
bit.
so we're just going to bring this strength back a little bit. Oh, wrong direction.
And can you, I guess, tilt it?
Yeah, so then we're going to go back to our rotation on here and just tilt it back.
That looks good.
We're getting close. We're not quite
that
there.
little gap right
Yeah.
there.
So we'll just decrease that bend a little more.
But when you mesh it, that won't be noticeable, right?
It won't be noticeable, but it will be a void if we print it.
Okay.
So we're just going to decrease this up one way a little more. Rotate this back a little more. Just a tiny bit more. We're also going to take this this tube.
The segmentation is
yeah, we're going to up the segmentation also to 128.
Okay.
But we'll still have that gap, so we need to come a little bit flatter. Let's try 70. And then rotate a little bit more.
A little too much?
Yeah, one back. And then
push. Right.
Yeah.
Alright.
It's pretty good. It's not exact, but it's Yeah,
see
it's probably
how
good
they look
enough.
next to each other. Yeah.
Alright, we'll bring our other ring back. You can also notice that they're not aligned with each other.
That's fine. We're just testing it out. Okay. That's really all I wanted to really see. How we would, because like that's our big things, like a flat surface and some sort of curved surface that we would have to like mess around with.
Yeah. And I'll play around with some of the other kind of deformers that let you more hug a surface properly, like surface and projection and a spline rail.
Okay.
Because sometimes those, they're based on the other existing piece of geometry rather than trying to eyeball it.
Okay.
It's just a matter of getting the kind of system behind them dialed in. So I'll do that before our next session working on this.
Okay.
And we'll be able to play around with those. But why don't we take this, cut it in half, and print out one so we can see how it fits around this.
You want to finish the rest of it?
What do you mean?
Because it's still open, or are you just gonna print out the top band?
Yeah, I was just gonna print out the top band just because, as we discussed earlier with the actual statue, that this part is a little rough.
Right, and so we don't know exactly
the exact dimension.
Okay.
So if we print out just half of that band, we'll print it out with the decorative part.
Okay.
We'll be able to tell, okay, like that's close enough, right?
Right.
So what I'll do is we'll grab another volume, or we'll just copy this one. We'll get rid of these parts. We'll turn this volume off for a sec. We'll put this and this into this other volume system. Now you can see these parts have merged. And we just need to move this smooth back up to our top. So they feel like one harmonious object.
That looks really nice.
Yeah. Do you want to see it rendered?
Yeah. Well, yes, yeah, why not?
Okay. Let's grab a nice material for us to look at. And do you want to see a marble? Probably.
Yeah, like a black marble. Yep, use that.
No, I have to use these ones. So I'm just going through my asset library. Bring it over here so you guys can see. And we don't want tiled marble, we just want kind of straight. So let's use this China black leathered marble. We'll just download it. And then we can pop it into our scene. And we'll apply this to our volume. And now we could actually bring back our backdrop and just bring it down a little bit so it's sitting below our object. Or we could bring the object up. I'm just going to bring that down just so it's sitting just a little below. And I'm just going to check the kind of back edge to make sure we're not clipping. Okay, yeah, so that looks good. So let's get a nice camera angle going here. a camera. So I'm just going to bring up.
Oh. That person had said our audio is very low.
Oh.
I guess I should have listened to it on the live stream to see how high the volume is, because we never really checked that.
That's true.
I just checked if it was like live.
So here, well, we can see right here. If I go back, we can see this. I'll just raise this up a little bit.
Going to the other room to check real quick, so I'm not.
Oh, I actually know who this person is. I'll have to reach out to them later and thank them.
Okay. Oh, live paused.
Where?
On Instagram.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I see it. Oh, that's unfortunate.
But you're still live on.
Alright, so I got a camera set up for us now at that view. So I'm just going to render out this scene, and then we'll take a look at the rendering in a sec. Alright, so now we have our rendered view.
It is relatively low compared to other.
Well, I just turned it up, so we'll have to. Alright, so we just want to dial in this render a little bit here. We're going to get a little bit better kind of lighting, a little bit better on the materials. Just make this look a little nicer. Even though it doesn't really matter for this project because it's a physical project. I know that we're going to want to see how it looks like before we go too deep. So let's make this lighting setup a little bit better. I'm going to try turning off this light. It'll take a few seconds before it catches up in the render view, but you'll see this in a sec. Yeah, that's already a lot better. A lot more dramatic, a little more shadow, contrast. We're going to move our background object up just a tad, just so that it sits really right under our object. I'm going to move us over to a direct lighting kernel, which will just move a little faster. And I want to adjust our volume a little bit. I just want to move this from, I'm just going to refine how that smooth fall off is. Make it a little, give it a little bit more information to work with. Just clean up some of the artifact. Maybe drop this to 0.05. Oops. 0.05. Will take a little longer to calculate. give render a second to catch up there. I'm just gonna, there we go. Yeah, that looks a little cleaner.
It does. It does.
A little less artifacts. And then let's just make this, we're looking a little gray in our marble.
It does look good.
I want to get a little bit deeper black here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the node editor for this material. And I'm just going to come into the color. And I'm going to give it a color correction. It's just a quick way of doing this. Not necessarily always the best way, but definitely a quick way. So we'll just find where that color map is. Base color, we'll plug that into our color correction. And then plug that back into our color channel. And we're just going to drop the brightness or the brightness by about half. Just deepen that black a little bit. Take a little while for it to update in our render view. Yeah, that's a little better.
Yeah,
Still a bit gray, but it's partially also the lighting.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, that's definitely looking like how we ultimately want it to look on this statue.
Yep.
And we have our 3D printer has finished. So we're going to jump over and take a look at that again. You can see we've got pretty good results on these kind of bushing related pieces here. Not quite perfect, but I think they're going to do the job. I'm just going to take these off. And just so you can see, we've been printing quite a few of these pieces for our hummingbird automatas. And so we'll be showing you assembling those either later today or tomorrow and throughout the week. But for now, I think we're going to call that session. Just show you one more time our geometry that we designed here. Give you a little look around it.
For something we just slapped together, it looks good.
Yeah.
It looks good.
Yeah. There's always kind of better practices in terms of how we make this stuff that we should employ when we do final versions. But for now, we'll just do this. One last thing we'll do is let's cut this in half so we can print a test piece for it.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab just a cube and just make it small enough for us to use it kind of as a point to cut from. I'm going to turn off our render because we don't need that right now. Bring us back to our main view. And come down to our top view. And just use this cube to split our geometry. Oops, that was the wrong dimension. We want to put that in the Z. So I'm just moving it back on the Z axis halfway, and then I'm going to extend it out till it's outside of our little ring here. Now, it's not aligned perfectly, but it's going to work for our test. Okay, so now I'm going to bring that into our volume system. And I'm going to make our volume have that be a subtract. So now we have half of that ring. And that way, if we put it on our object, we'll be able to tell if we got at the right radius or diameter around this part of our statue. So I'm just going to do a couple more little things before we export that. And give us a little adaptive sampling on that. So we just reduce our polygonal count when we bring it to printing. And then we will make this its own object. Basically just copying the volume system. And now we can export it. And in a second, I'll show you us bringing that into the 3D printing environment. So I just want to save our project where we have our hummingbird parts. That way we can open up a new project. And we'll keep those settings. And now we can add that object that we just created. There we go. We'll have to print this with some support structure, which will potentially kind of make a little bit of scarring on that bottom edge. So eventually we may just print this section out where it's facing upwards. Basically just rotating it so that it's sitting up, and just print that out as its own section. That way we get it to be really nice and clean and crisp geometry, and we won't have to have any supports on our detailed areas. But for now, just because we're testing the diameter, we're just going to go ahead and slice this. And I do want to change our filament, because I don't want to use the white filament for this. So we'll switch up to some of our black filament. So I'll jump us over to our printer. And we can actually just use this line of filament that we already have in slot 4. And it'll actually make it a lot more detailed overall. It'll take a bit longer, but I think that'll be okay. So I'm going to switch this from the default. Let's take a look at the screen. I'm going to switch this up from our default extruder to number 4 and reslice it. And send to connect. Oh, actually we got to change a couple more things. Move this to our tighter nozzle. And we want to enable supports. Oh, you know what? I just realized one other thing that we kind of messed up on here. We have this a little lower than the rest of it. So it's actually not sitting on that flat. It's only sitting on this area. So we're just going to have to fix that. So the way we'll do that is we'll delete our exported version, and we'll just bring this up a tiny bit. I just want to check on our side view. Yeah, see? You can see this right here? So that little divot, it's just sitting a little below the edge of the rest of our object. And so I'm just going to move it up 1 millimeter. See if that fixes it. Oh, I moved it out instead of up. Up is in the Y dimension for this. Okay, we can move it actually back down about halfway, or about a quarter. So let's try 0.25. Yeah, see now it's sitting just above instead of just below. So now we'll re-export this. we come back to our printing software, we should just be able to do a reload from disk. And yeah, it just popped back up. So now when we slice this, yeah, there we go. Now we're getting that bottom piece has its support, has its brim, and we get some support structure underneath that edge, which probably won't be too visible even once we break it away. But we'll see if we want to turn it in that other direction I discussed, just to give us a little cleaner geometry. And I just want to make this a 0.15 millimeter layer height instead of 0.05, so it won't take 7 hours to print.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, so now it's at just under 3 hours, which is still, it's a very fine layer height. It's not really necessary for this, but
You don't need it too fine. This is a test piece.
should I switch the filament roll so that it'll go a little quicker?
Yeah.
Yeah? Alright. So we'll do a unload on our filament in slot 4. And just pop these little white parts, the brim off the bed. Probably only need like 10% infill for this, and we'll switch it over to our 0.4 millimeter nozzle, transfer all those settings, and we can bring this to a 0.25 millimeter structural layer height, reslice it. And now we're at, yeah, just over an hour instead of 3 or 4. Yeah. So just gotta wait for that filament to come up to temperature so I can unload it like that. And here, I'll give us a little wider shot here so you can see this filament roll that I'm unloading here. Just going to rewind onto this spool. It in our little clip for a sec while we get the other roll out of slot 1, which is this white one over here. this one back. Now we can get our black filament ready to replace it.
Cleaning out the previous filament?
Yeah, it's just gonna push this white filament line. It's a little hard to see, but you can see this little white line right here.
I see it.
And it's gonna push it until it gets still black. Just to make sure we don't get any of the previous filament in our new print.
We don't want any filament mixing around here.
Alright, now we should be good to start this print. Oh, I missed one setting here, I think. Yeah, I gotta change this back to our default. And reslice it. And resend it. Just try that one more time. Slice, send. And it's wanting to add it to the queue, even though there is no queue. Let me just turn our printer. off and on again. Hopefully that'll reset the queue. Skip the queue. Let's try that. Alright, there we go. Now this should work. Okay, yeah. It's downloading. It should take a few minutes to heat up and start up. And I'm just gonna let you guys watch this print, and I'll check back in a little while, in about an hour, and we'll take a look at how it came out.